Thanks, Kara. We knew one of us was going to forget. So if everyone could just raise their hand on screen, how many people were involved in a focus group in the last year? See a few hands popping up. How many of you are on a subcommittee currently? See a number of hands. Excellent. How many people were at our April planning meeting where we went over all the strategies and had 2 days of discussion? Oh yeah, we got a lot of hands popping up. How many people were part of our CBO meetings in May, our community-based organization meetings? We've got a few hands. And how many of you were part of our industry workshops that were in, some were in May, some of them were in June? Great. Excellent. We just wanted to acknowledge everyone's engagement and effort in the last 6 months and thank everyone. There's been a ton of work that has gone into our strategic plan, which we are going to be presenting to you today and then voting on. So here, let me go back. I'm going to share my screen. So the purpose of today's meeting is we are going to have our strategic plan consultants, Agnew Beck, which have been leading the way the past 6 months on these planning efforts, do an overview of what we have accomplished. And then the council is going to have an official vote on whether we approve of the product that has been created. We will have some discussion around that, and there will be an opportunity to say that, yes, we vote on this moving forward, but we still would like to see a few modifications. So there's still an opportunity for that. But we are getting ready to submit this to the state next week as part of our contract. So, and then we have a few program updates that have come down from the state, and we are getting ready to close out our planning phase, and we are moving into the catalyst phase. So we're going to do an overview of that, and then we'll talk about some next steps. So that is the plan for today. We've set aside an hour and a half. I don't think we're going to need it, but for discussion and questions and that sort of thing, we wanted to make sure we had enough time. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Shauna and Allison.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. I'm Shauna Doherty, here with Allison Schwedner from Agnew Beck. We're a woman-owned consulting firm based in Alaska, and Allison and I are based in the Truckee office. And both of us have worked throughout the Sierra for the last 20 years, and really excited to be here. Met many of you over the last 7 months. So what we're going to do just real quickly before I dive in is Allison and I are going to talk for probably about 10 minutes. That just gives you an indication that our assumption is that you've all reviewed the plan, have been part of this process. This is a conversation you're very used to, so we're not going to spend, this is not a presentation. We're going to go page by page. We're going to give you just where we're at. And also just for those who are brand new to today's meeting, we're happy to go back and fill you in on all of the information on how we got here, but we are making some assumptions that this is a group that's been very involved, and we appreciate that. So next slide. So why are we even doing a strategic plan? So As a reminder, this is the second deliverable that the state is requiring as part of California Jobs First. So just bottom line is we have to, in order to unlock the Catalyst funding, which is the next phase of work. So bare bones, we had to do it. We decided as a collaborative that this plan was an opportunity for us to really make it our own. We didn't want to just check the box and submit something to the state based on sort of their outline. So our primary audience in writing this plan were all of you. We are hitting the mark as far as state requirements, but really the audience is you and your ideas and taking what we heard and crafting those into a collective set of priorities and strategies. What's exciting about this plan that's 100 pages, hopefully this one you will see has lots of graphs and photos and white space, so it's not as heavy of a lift to review. But really, this is the first time that the 7 counties in this region have come together to create a set of I'm going to use that word, initial priorities that can really be used for advocacy at the state level to signal to the state, this is who we are, this is the situation and our challenges, these are our opportunities, this is the work that's already going on that we want to leverage, these are the partners at the table, these are the things we want to work on. And Erica will talk a little bit about what the state's doing, because there's 13 regions putting together these plans, and the state will roll up all of the priorities from each of the regions to create sort of a statewide operational plan. So this is sort of us signaling to the state. This is an exciting time to share, like I said, the vision. It's a collaborative, it's a tool. It's not an end. It's a tool for action when people get together. The hope is that they're referencing it and leveraging the expertise of Sierra Business Council to help them with distinct tasks or needs to move things forward. It's a starting place. It's absolutely not an endpoint. It's not perfect, but it is a starting point for all of us to have on paper what is important to us. The other thing that's really critical is there's many, many more strategies and actions in this plan that California Jobs First funding will not cover. And so what it does is it lays out what the priorities are in the Sierra as an initial starting place and identifies, and then the next step will be, what can we move forward for Catalyst funding, and where do we need to start going out for other pots of funding to move these actions forward? And that's just important to remember. Next slide. So you've seen this slide before. So there's 3 phases of the California Jobs First initiative. As Erica mentioned, this is the end of the planning phase. So this was a 2-year phase. Last year, it was all about collecting community feedback and data. So it was a qualitative and quantitative look at the 7 regions and rolling that up into what was called the Regional Plan Part 1. And from that, we moved into this year, leveraging the data and the feedback collected in year 1 to build a set of strategies to answer the question, well, if this is the current situation and the challenges and the opportunities and the data in our region, what do we want to do? What do we want to focus on? As Erica mentioned, next up is going to be moving, and these really should be crossed over because you're already starting to work on Catalyst and then implementation. This is an overview of the planning process. Erica, hold on one second. Erica mentioned, asked you all in the beginning what parts you've been involved with. I'm sure many of you have been part of every part across the last 2 years. So this is what I just mentioned. We started with the discovery of what are the current conditions in the 7 counties. And then we use that in January and April, through January and April. We talked at governing council meetings. We met in April up in Tahoe for 2 days to look at our foundational elements and their challenges and co-create around strategies and actions. Spent May And June, going out into the community and working with partners, community-based organizations, many of you, to have conversations with the community to refine these strategies. And then we've moved into we had the strategy packet, which was that PowerPoint set of strategies and actions, refine until we got to this document. And the exciting part is we're very close to being ready to send that off to the state and focus on implementation in the years to come. Next slide. This is a little hard to read, but the summary of community input, you've all been part of this. This is also in the plan. What I'm going to highlight here is there's been lots and lots of conversations. I'm really proud of the fact that we had, and this is 570 public comments to date, between the strategy packet and the draft strategic plan. That set of comments is going into a document that I think Jill has posted, so you all can see that, and then the response, which just is a tremendous amount of engagement. And I want to assure you that every single comment has been looked at and, as where applicable, integrated into the plan. And so we truly have been listening to you. Next. Before I hand it over to, I'm going to hand it over to Allison, who is going to talk a little bit about the plan itself.
Thank you, Shauna, and good morning. It's good to see you all. And like Shauna said, I'm just going to go basically over the layout of the plan and what's included. So just a reminder that the plan is laid out in 5 chapters. There's an executive summary in the beginning and then an appendices at the end that has quite a bit of rich content. And again, just to reiterate that what Shauna already said, that is that the audience of this plan is really you all, and that the state is really a secondary audience. And so because there are requirements and required elements that the state asks us to include, those are embedded throughout the document. But if you want to see those as a standalone, those are referenced in the appendices at the end, if you just want to see a list of the things we had to include for the state. Next slide. And just a reminder, you have all seen this framework many times, but this is a framework that guided the development of the plan and the roadmap that we've been basically following for the last several months to create the plan. And as Shauna also said, you have all provided feedback at each of these levels. You provided feedback on the vision, mission, the goals of the plan. And then the last several months, you've all provided tremendous input specifically on the strategy areas that are laid out in the target industries and the foundational elements. And so if you could just go into the next slide and we can talk a little bit about the target industries. So just a reminder that the target industries were identified in the regional plan part 1 that you all worked on in 2023, which was again based on qualitative and quantitative data. And the target industries are really the economic segments that you all identified in the Sierra region with the most potential for quality job growth. And so in the plan, there are strategies in each of these target industries. There's outcomes, which are really the conditions that we're trying to create. And then you'll see specific strategies in the beginning of action steps and partners to help drive these strategies forward for the target industries. And I will note, one of the things about this plan, and as we've discussed with many of you over the last several months, there's already so much good work happening in each of these target industry areas, as well as the foundational elements that we'll talk about in a moment. So the plan really works to incorporate and acknowledge the good work that's already happening, leverage what's already in place, and really build future action steps. So just want to make that note. And for the target industries, when we start talking about moving the plan forward, there will be specific sector navigators who are going to be focusing on implementation in our target industry strategies. And Erica will talk about those shortly. Okay, next slide, please. And so the other significant component of the strategic plan are strategies around the foundational elements. And so these are 6 kind of cross-cutting issues that impact the entire Sierra region. And we know that unless efforts are focused in these areas to overcome issues and barriers, it will be difficult to develop our vision and achieve our outcomes. So again, the plan includes specific outcomes, strategies, the beginning action steps, and some identified partners to help kind of move the needles in each of these foundational elements. So that is an incredibly quick overview of how the plan is laid out. And Erica, I will turn it over to you to lead the next part of the conversation. Thank you.
So for our next steps, as I mentioned, we are submitting this deliverable to the state next week to fulfill our contract. However, there will be an opportunity for us to make a few minor modifications moving forward. So if there's something that you all can't live with, we can still have a discussion about that. So I just want to make that super clear moving forward in the next couple weeks. So the rollout of the strategic plan, we're kind of moving into this implementation stage. We just wanted to make clear of what, SBC's role is moving forward, the role of the collaborative, and then the role of the region. Because really we are here as SBC is the regional convener and fiscal agent. We're here as a capacity builder right now. But as of this moment, the state does not have funding planned for us after the catalyst phase. So it's going to be a gradual handoff in the next 2 years. So the way that it is currently mapped out is that, we are still here for the next 2 years as the fiscal agent and regional convener of the catalyst funds. Those funds are going to be available through September 2026. We are going to help oversee the industry coordinators through that September 26 timeline and continue to lead the updating research efforts. And, that goes into the regional summary part 1 and part 2, which is a big 400-page report that we produced, and then our strategic plan. So those are our 2 deliverables that are meant to be living documents that we will be updating in the next 2 years. And then we are here to help distribute and manage the Catalyst project funds through that September 26 timeline. The role of the collaborative moving forward, we're going to talk more about this, but, is to use these part 1, part 2 documents as tools. So the governing council is really going to be taking more of a lead moving forward, in this regional process and prioritizing dollars by voting, on those projects that are coming up. And then the industry coordinators, which we're going to talk more about, is going to be convening working groups that align with our identified industry sectors, and there's going to be a scope for those groups moving forward. So as a region, once again, these documents are meant to be tools. So they are supposed to help implement, and prioritize these strategies and action steps outside, not only in the industry sectors, but also the foundational elements that were identified outside of the industry sectors. So local government can use these as tools in decision-making processes. These can be referenced in grant applications, used to help leverage, this infrastructure to collaborate regionally in identifying, other funding needs by stacking capacity, applying for dollars, and implementing projects. So that's the intention that we are working towards in the next 2 years. Before we vote on the strategic plan, we wanted to open it up to any questions or comments, things that went well, things that we're proud of moving forward, or excited about moving into the next phase. So I am going to stop talking and let those of you come off mute if you have anything to share before we open it up to the vote.
Erica, I just want to reiterate for everybody that's on the call that we had 570 comments, but I believe it was more than that. And those comments were so critical to make this document as comprehensive and representative as we could for the region. So just a huge amount of gratitude to everybody that took the time. If your comment didn't make it in there, we typically gave you a response as to what the issue was. So, and I think we just saw a message from Stan asking where additional comments go. Be mindful of the deadline. We have to submit this. So if there's something that you want in there, get it to us as soon as possible, hopefully by Monday. But anyway, thank you to everyone. This has been a tremendous process, and we're just getting started.
Thanks, Kristen. First hand I see is Megan.
Megan McDevitt in your county. I just wanted to say that when I was reading through the strategic plan, this final document, I was so impressed with where we ended up. And there are little persnickety things that I could say about the document, or say that it is amazingly actionable, amazingly specific, included everything that was a priority that we brought to you from my perspective, from Hannah's perspective, and I couldn't be more pleased with how you managed to pull this off. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Thanks, Megan.
I just wanted to comment that I'm really impressed that childcare is mentioned so many times in there. I think that's a huge issue, and I'm glad that it's noted in there. So I think that's good.
Thank you, Mary. Mark?
Yeah, my kudos to everyone that made this document what it is, from our first meetings of brainstorming and Post-its and whiteboards and easel paper, and you all have done an amazing job to put this document together. And yeah, kudos to you, Erica, and everyone else on the team. Wow, impressive.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments? Oh, David.
Yeah, I did comment fairly extensively on the document, but I think there's two overall comments that are probably more important. One is that this is probably not SBC's fault, but the state really rushed this program. It really was imposed down from above, and there wasn't nearly enough time for people to really think through some of these things. I don't know how many people actually read the document. I know that I've reviewed everybody's comments that you posted on the website, and there was basically only 3 or 4 people that went through it in detail. And it's not necessarily a lack of interest, but there wasn't enough time. And the second thing is a lot of the strategies and proposed actions or recommended actions. I really think there has to be a practicality filter. A lot of that stuff was very important to some people. It's something that's just not realistic or not something that we can do. So those are my 2 overall criticisms. But I do know that all of you at SBC worked your butts off on this, but yeah, it probably would have been a lot better if you'd been given more time. So thank you for the work you did and the sleepless nights you had.
Thank you, David. Yeah, and I mean, I don't see those as criticisms. I think that everyone knows our timeline was shortened, and it was rushed to begin with, and then it was shortened on top of that. But I wouldn't look at it as an end-all be-all. As I said previously, it's meant to be a living document. So think of the last 6 months as a sprint. So we did a sprint to get a starting point of a product, and now we have 2 years to really refine it. So there is an opportunity, there's still an opportunity to work on that practicality piece. If there's a strategy or something that you are, familiar with, and you have a better way of framing it or looking at it, please let us know. there's going to be plenty of opportunities in the next 2 years. But yes, our team is very happy that the sprint is now coming to an end and we're moving on to the next phase.
David, thank you for your comments. I will add that we wanted this plan to be as inclusive as possible. And you are right. I come from the pragmatic finance sector, so I understand about feasibility very much. However, we also were tracking, this is a very forward-thinking plan. So we are looking at policy at the state level that is anticipated to roll out in the next 5, 10, 20 years that we can get ahead of. So it's, there are many things in this plan that cannot be done today, but we are still within the planning scope. And, but appreciate your pragmatic look at the whole thing.
Barbara, did you come off mute?
I did, thank you. I just, I want to kind of piggyback and not to necessarily double down, but piggyback on what Supervisor Griffith just mentioned, is that there's a lot of aspirational projects in here. And to me, it's not so much of a strategic plan as it is a document that captured everybody's wishes, dreams, and hopes for the region. Because strategic plans aren't meant to be hundreds of pages long. They're meant to be documents that people can look at and reference and put into action. So I just say that all by way of background as to when we get into approving projects and evaluating projects. My hope is that we are pragmatic and we keep the aspiration, but we also keep a dose of heavy reality in it too. Because in the next couple of years, we do have an opportunity to pull down a lot of federal money that not to make a political statement, but I just think it's going to stop at some point. It has to. So I think pragmatism needs to be mixed with aspiration as we go forward and actually evaluate projects for catalysts. And we keep that in mind. That's all.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
I have one more question, Erica, if you don't mind. You mentioned that this is a living document and if there are any additional things that they're open to discussion. What does that mean as far as inclusion in this document? Is it just a discussion item or do we have the opportunity to modify or add, heaven forbid, add to this document?
There is an opportunity to add. So as Kristen mentioned earlier, we do have a deadline and we do have to submit this next week to the state. However, this is our region's document. So we're already working on revising the regional summary from December. That's already in progress. We have a team member that is dedicated to it. And there will be other revision processes for the strategic plan. Since it's been such a sprint the last 6 months, we figured we'd give everyone a little bit of a breather and then come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. And I'm sure many more things are going to come up in terms of that pragmatic piece that you mentioned and refining some language and that sort of thing. But I think the idea that the state had in mind is that they just wanted to get all the regions to have a starting point. So everyone is starting the catalyst phase with this background research, with this strategic plan to start getting the ball moving and help prioritizing dollars moving forward. Great. Well, if there are no other thoughts, then we are going to move on to our first official vote for the Sierra Jobs First Region Council. So let me back to share screen.
Hey, Erica, one request I would say for the governing council members who are going to be asked to vote on this, would it be if we could just make a request that those voting would turn their cameras on? It'd be just helpful for this part of the meeting.
Yes, yes. So for our process, forgive me, I have many screens that open that I'm toggling. If the council members could please come on camera. You all have been labeled. So I'm going to call on you and you're going to come off mute, and it's either yes or yes, I approve with some minor changes, no, or abstain. So you have 4 choices. So yes, yes with changes, no, or abstain. Does everybody feel good about that? No pressure?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to call based on the order that you all show up on my screen. So
Right,
Karen, you're
Erica.
first. Then.
Erica, do you want to just run through the list as shown on page 3 of the document? That might be easier. Because then we know when we're coming up, because it's all in alphabetical order.
I could do that. There's only 16 of you on the call. So
Whatever works for you. That might be easier for people.
oh, I appreciate that. We'll go Karen, you're first up.
I vote yes.
And Mark Schwartz.
I vote yes.
Sandra.
I think there's 2 Sanders on.
Moberly.
Yes.
Mary Watts.
Yes.
Dave Taney.
Yes.
Angelica Mora.
Yes.
Kathy Galino.
Yes.
Meryl Picard.
Yes.
Jane Freeman.
Yes.
Will Fassett.
Yes.
Griselda.
Yes.
Sandra Chapman.
Yes.
Maureen Frank.
Yes.
Megan McCammon.
Yes.
Charlotte.
Yes.
Liz Grands.
I believe Liz in an alternate for Sandra.
Got it. I think that's all. Is that all 16?
I didn't get called. This is
Okay.
Jennifer Burrows.
Jennifer, sorry.
Yes.
And hi, this is Liz Grands. I'm sorry I didn't get off mute fast enough, but yes, I'm an alternate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Excellent. I think that's unanimous. We can move forward. Okay. So we are going to talk a little bit about Catalyst now. So this next week, or next 2 weeks, is our last 2 weeks of the planning phase. And then we are moving into the next 2 years of the Catalyst program. As a reminder, the entire package, funding package from the state was 14 million. Now that's broken up into buckets that tell us how are able to spend those dollars. So there are 9 million for projects. And I know many of you are here to hear the update on what that process will look like. So we have updated our timeline. We have sent, I think, at least 2 emails out about this, and we've announced it at our last council meeting in June. But just as a reminder, we are bumping out our timeline just a little bit to give people more time. So one of the things that we heard from many of you is that there wasn't enough time to put together Catalyst project applications for that 9 million bucket. So we have now pushed the RFP to open on October 15th. So then there will be 2 months for you to put those applications together. So it will close on December 15th, just before the holidays. And then we're going to give everybody a break so you can enjoy the holidays with your families. And then come January, our team is going to internally review all of the applications and then make the suggestions to the council. And we're going to put together those virtual pitch sessions as we promised previously. It'll all be done via Zoom. And those will take place late February, early March. We'll have a better idea come December when applications roll in. And then in March is going to be the next council meeting, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. That meeting is going to be dedicated to a virtual vote on at least the first round of funding for Catalyst projects. And then we're hoping people will be in contract end of March, early April. So we're going to try and get those dollars out the door as quickly as possible. So we do have just a little bit of an updated structure for our collaborative as a whole moving forward. So our governing council is going to stay the same, although the meeting schedule is going to be simplified. We're going to move to a quarterly meeting format to take the burden off of everyone. The first quarter and the last quarter are both going to be virtual because what we have learned from the last 2 years is that weather has impacted those dates during those months, and we end up being virtual anyway. And then the in-person meetings, we will shoot for quarter 2 and quarter 3. So one will be on the west side, one will be on the east side. So there'll be 2 opportunities for both slopes to travel back and forth. Our subcommittees are going to be dissolved. However, those of you involved, there will be plenty of opportunities to still engage. It's just going to move into these more industry coordinator working groups. So right now, there are intended to be 5 working groups, 1 dedicated to each of the industry sectors. We don't know exactly what that meeting structure is going to look like. We're going to lean a little bit on those groups to kind of come up with something that works for them. But they will be reporting out to the council at those quarterly meetings. So just as a reminder for the scope moving forward. So we are working to expand outreach and engagement regionally. We're working to ensure that the data and research is up to date. And then we are tracking projects that will be identified by the council moving forward. We are coordinating implementation phase applications, and we're going to have an update on that in a moment. And then the council will be voting on those projects moving forward and other major milestones. So just a quick update on the industry coordinators. We received a handful of applications. That RFP is closed. Our team is currently reviewing it internally. We are shooting to begin let those individuals or organizations know and then begin the contracting process in the next couple of weeks and starting in September. And just as a reminder, the role of the industry coordinators, although these contracts are going to be managed by Sierra Business Council because we are the convener, but the role of these 5 contracts are going to be focusing on projects, capacity, and funding. So they are going to be helping identify projects, cataloging, prioritizing those projects, building partnerships, collaborating, encouraging other groups within those industries to collaborate with one another, and then finding other aligning funding sources outside of the Jobs First funding to stack on top of the existing funds within Jobs First. Because remember, none of our dollars are meant to fully fund one initiative. And then just as a reminder, our Catalyst projects are meant to be pre-development and last mile. So these are just some examples of some projects. This is kind of just outlined by the state. Things could look like analysis, development, research on finance mechanisms, building partnerships, basic environmental infrastructure, pre-development activities, and supporting costs for building and sustainability, capacity building. All those sorts of things fall into Catalyst eligible. In addition, this is the state Catalyst base criteria that all 13 regions have to follow for the Catalyst funds. So I'm not going to go through all of this. You've seen it. We've been going over this since April, but there's an equity piece, the climate piece, and then the job quality and access piece that has to meet the minimum criteria. So all of this will be included in the RFP when it's rolled out on October 15th, but just keep it in the back of your mind as ideas are popping up. And we've had a few updates on implementation funding from the state. So all of you know that the funding was truncated a little bit. It's right now, they have it laid out to be 3 phases of 50 million rolled out over 3 years. That is it could be subject to change, but that's what it is right now. They have just told us last week that this is most likely going to get pushed out into early next year, so 2025. We're not expecting to see that RFP anytime soon. So if you were waiting on implementation funds, I would expect to be waiting a little bit longer. For the tribal allocation, that was dropped from 25 to 15 million, but they are getting ready to open up that RFP. We've sent it out to our subcommittee, and Travis has been communicating with certain individuals on potentially pulling together some applications for that. Or just as a reminder, both of these sources are statewide competitive. So SBC, as the convener, has no control over these 2 funding buckets, but we are here to help in those efforts moving forward. Are there any questions about the updates, our next scope, where we're going? I'm going to. Sandra Moberly.
Yeah, one question I had or thought is that we've at least kind of in our area, have talked a lot about the programs and projects that we're looking at, and you outlined all the criteria and the fact that a lot of the things that we've been thinking about may not meet all those criteria. So I'm wondering if SBC is going to, or is working to, kind of, as you see projects coming in, as you see people talking about projects, to say, hey, Mono County, your idea about X, Y, and Z really aligns with this, this, and this. Why don't you guys start working together? Those types of things. Because when we look at that amount of funding, we're really looking at ultimately a small amount of funding coming to our region, and it makes sense to me to really kind of, as much as we can, narrow and refine these projects. I mean, I'm not quite sure when we think about the governing council approving projects, like how many we're going to be looking at, but ultimately I see that there's going to be really limited. We should try to focus as much as we can on ones that meet all the requirements and not have people spending a lot of time putting together programs and projects that just don't meet that. So I feel like if you look at that little project list, we're just throwing everything in there, and there hasn't been that connection, like, to the applicants or to the people who are putting in projects that you have to do these things too. This may not meet that. And so I feel like there's a need to maybe refine that list and help us, help all the different, people who are putting in applications, or program ideas, project ideas, kind of refine that and step back and collaborate. And we've been doing it internally. I'm sure, I know you're aware that we've been kind of meeting amongst ourselves to try to refine it as much as we can. But I think there's a need to do that at the broader level and really focus on, maybe just a handful of projects that really kind of we think are the most competitive and the most likely to receive funding. And I think, to me, that seems like something that has to happen between now and when December, whenever the final application period is done. But putting it out there, I know some of the people on the call, we've talked about this as well. So I'm happy, if anybody wants to also fill in there as well.
Yes, definitely. No, thank you for that, Sandra. So we sent out an email in early July with the list of ideas that we were currently aware of. And in that email, we made suggestions to everyone in the region that if you see a project where you see synergies with your project, we would recommend kind of tag teaming or collaborating kind of on a larger regional scale. And so outside of that list, or people who have emailed us or attended the technical assistance workshops that we had a few weeks ago, we're doing the best that we can to make recommendations based on what we hear. There's always going to be projects coming out of the woodworks that we don't know about. But yes, 100% agree with you that as much as possible, we encourage everyone to collaborate on that larger scope.
And I just think, from my perspective, I think that a lot of what I'm seeing is that we may not know, applicants may not know this. So I feel like maybe a proactive approach from SBC and identifying those and pointing those people and a reality check, really, like before we get to December, we don't want people to churn and spend a bunch of time doing all this work if their project doesn't meet those state requirements. So I think that I'm just kind of I just want to make sure that people aren't spinning their wheels. And if someone's working on something that may not meet the minimum qualifications from the state, that we're pointing them like, hey, why don't you work with this group on this thing that's related, so just some proactive kind of nudging people into the right direction. But I don't know, maybe nobody else feels this way. It seems to me that we just need more help. And I think that you're kind of while a lot of us have been really engaged and involved, some more than others. But I think that there's still that need to have someone giving us the reality check and helping it point us in the right direction.
Sandra, maybe I'm going to jump in. Maybe I can answer this more directly. So the focus has been on finishing the strategic plan and teeing up for Catalyst. Part of the reason the timing was pushed out is that we were getting feedback from people that were not ready. So in August, we scheduled ideation workshops, which were specifically to do exactly what you're saying. So we had workshops on the west side led by Kara. Eric and I met in Mammoth, and we met in Bishop with primarily Inyo County, but other projects came in. And I think it was a great first shot at those. And in fact, certain projects came up in Inyo County that were clearly identified as partnering with Mono County. And the reality is, even though we're one region, there will likely be projects that are west side and east side, just because it makes sense geographically, capacity-wise, et cetera. But as we're moving into Catalyst, this is a key role of the industry sector coordinators, is to do exactly what you're saying. So One other point I want to make is that there will likely be multiple rounds in the Catalyst application. All the regions are doing this, so it can be open for a period of time and then closed. And some of the funding will go out. And in fact, of the projects we know do not total to 9 million. And some of them are just, they're not ready. They're not feasible. So there's, I just want to assure you that that is part of the plan. I think that the ideation workshops, I'm kind of glad they were small. They were very helpful for both SBC and the potential applicants. But thanks for your feedback. Appreciate that.
David.
Yeah, maybe we were looking at the wrong thing, but one group that we're working with on a potential project looked at the RFP, I think, and basically they were originally had some of the concerns Sandra spoke of things being much too complicated and taking a lot of time, and they thought it was a fairly simplified process. It would take a lot less work and to put together, respond to the RFP than they'd originally feared. So I don't know if that gives people any confidence or not, but that's what we were told.
Great, thanks, David.
Hey, Erica, I just want to chime in. Maybe you can clarify in the chat. Folks are looking for more information on the role of subcommittees and who will be screening applications moving forward when they're dissolved.
So Project ID is still going to be involved in the next couple months. But as Kristen said, we've been so focused on the strategic plan that we're switching gears a little bit now. So there's going to be a little bit of a pause because we want to make sure that we do this next piece meaningfully. In terms of the other subcommittees, as I mentioned earlier, there will be an opportunity for engagement in those industry working groups. There's also an opportunity for us to expand our council if we think that that is what's needed. And then in addition to that, there is the opportunity for the more regional county groups to start meeting a little bit more regularly. And we know many of you do that already. Does that answer your question a little bit more?
And maybe just to confirm, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Erica, is that the Project ID subcommittee will be still vetting the applications in the coming months. Is that correct?
Grouping.
Grouping, okay.
Helping group.
Just one more question. I just thought of this. So when the council is looking at the projects for consideration, I'm assuming the vetting, the only projects that meet all of the requirement, everything will be presented to the council, right? So it's going to be, it'll be all, that's what the committee is going to be doing, narrowing it all down. And so only ones that check all the boxes will be considered. Is that correct?
That's the intention, Sandra. However, with the caveat that, and the Project ID subcommittee has talked about this, that we were working, it was put on hold. Now we're going to pick it back up. We're working on a weighting system. So projects that do meet all the criteria will be much more heavily weighted. But for example, if we only get 3 projects or responses to the RFP and only 2 of them meet the criteria, I guess that we would have to take into account in the weighting system, like, do they have everything except one? And then kind of what that process would look like. So we don't have those details ironed out completely, but that's what's on our, that's what we will be working on in the next few months.
I have a question, Erica. So with the tribes, that set aside money is not very much for what, 115 tribes in California. Should we also be submitting in the others one as well, because it just doesn't really make sense that our chances aren't very likely to happen in the tribal one.
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
I've said that from the beginning that the 15 million, it's very small and it's statewide. I still think that we should put in applications because you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. But also we do have our regional pot that our council has control over. And so, yes, absolutely.
Because I haven't really heard from anyone in my area about reaching out to tribes to do any projects together. So I'm kind of, surprised again of that separation and not working together to see how we could do a project together in our area.
Yes, I would definitely encourage everyone to work on that collaboration piece. Travis, is Travis on the call?
Yes, I am, Erica. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing
So,
excellent.
just if anyone does not know, Travis is our tribal coordinator for the region. So he is working with a handful of people on pulling together some tribal specific applications, but also some collaborative efforts with other projects. And Travis, do you mind if I call on you to just speak a little bit about what you've been working on the last couple months?
Yes, Erica. So what I've been consistently communicating to the tribal participants for this California Jobs First process that, as a governing council, you just approve of the strategic plan, is to continue moving forward with, the contemplated projects that would be submitted for the respective grant proposals within this window of October 15th to December 15th. Now that the separate tribal initiative, has been just now recently updated, there is a separate public comment on that. And so there is time to start communicating amongst the tribal participants and the tribal organizations and tribal representatives to, look at if there's a common interest in working together on that $15 million under the tribal initiative, separate statewide allocation. At the same time, I strongly encourage this, continue to go down this path with the California Jobs First, the Sierra region Jobs First process in terms of what's being contemplated on the food sovereignty for one, and the tribal tourism. And, those two, I'll be working with the respective leads in meeting and in terms of what's been in a process of, the format as far as the project concept next week. Now, there also is other project concepts that tail land acquisition, as well as even small business and entrepreneurship support and assistance. There are even a couple non-tribal organizations that are contemplating and strongly considering, moving forward with a potential grant proposal submission that would have some benefits to, the tribes on both the Western Slope and Eastern Slope. Even though I'm hitting on right now everyone with respect to the tribal participants within all the 7 counties, I've also made it a point and expressed this and communicated this, which is still in place, which is, if you're still looking at as a non-tribal participant, how to engage a tribe or multiple tribes when it comes to, maybe getting a letter of support, et cetera, or even just your business model or the model that's going to be contemplated for the grant submission, feel free to reach out to me and, you know, we can work together in terms of, you know, how, when, and in what form to engage tribes or tribal organizations and tribal individuals for, let's say, a letter of support for sake of discussion. So anyway, thank you for this time. And if there's any questions, please fire away as well.
Thanks, Travis. And Magnolia just dropped in Travis's email in the chat. If anyone has questions on how they can better engage with the tribes in our region, he's a good resource for that. And not just a letter of support, but I also wanted to add the co-applicant requirement in our minimum criteria. So there's a couple different bullets there, but please reach out if you have questions.
And Liz, I'm sorry, but we actually did meet with the Mono Tribe when we were down. Travis was there as well when we were in Mammoth about a couple of their projects. And we'll continue to work with them.
And this comment is for everyone. So as the respective industry sector coordinators are selected and come on board, everyone will have an opportunity to reach out to those respective firms to seek, you know, guidance, or if you have, you know, at a certain point in time, a draft of a grant proposal, you know, you can then seek their respective input and, you know, guidance in terms of just refining and further developing a grant proposal. So, you know, that's what's, you know, coming down the pipeline in terms of a resource to each of you as you get to that point in time, you know, as your respective teams are at a point in time to either seek guidance or better yet, have a solid draft of a grant, and then, you know, get the industry sector coordinators input as far as like, you know, suggested recommendations for changes and how that would potentially meet the criteria. That's all. Thank you.
That's great. Anybody else? Any other questions on Catalyst implementation, collaboration moving forward, process timeline? Well, I think this might go down as our shortest council meeting on record.
Erica, we had a VIP join that can still vote. I want to make sure that we get his vote. Jose Garcia. He had a problem with the link. So maybe, yeah.
Jose, welcome. Would you like to cast your vote for the strategic plan? Choices are yes, yes with modifications, no, or abstain. So you have 4 choices.
Yes, with modification.
Okay, thank you. And we'll follow up with you after on those modifications.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone from our team have anything to add before we close out today?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again. And as we move into Catalyst, because our goal is changing, there may be some shifts in how in the governing committee and how it's run and in subcommittees, particularly since we're bringing on now all these industry sector focus groups. Instead of having 10 different groups to manage, we want to hone that down. So stay tuned for how that will look. And if you have input, or if you are like, I'm done with this process, let me off, please let us know. Great if you had a referral for somebody new, but keep in mind the next 2 years, we're going to be focusing on implementing this plan, finding money, funding Catalyst, aligning with new state and federal policy where there could be additional funds, engaging with tribes more authentically, and to really trying to see what we can do working as a region. So just appreciate your input on that. I mean, again, as Erica mentioned, we are just the convener. This will be your plan. So please help us co-create the best possible outcome here.
I
Great.
wanted to add one more thing before we close. We do have a new team member. So if you see the name Kayla floating around, not to put you on the spot, Kayla, but we just wanted to announce to you all that we have another navigator / coordinator working on the project, and that is Kayla. She's on this call as well. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jill.
Okay, and I just wanted to reiterate that all comments from governing board are due by, and anybody actually, today at by close of today is the close of the final comment period on the draft strategic plan. Monday, we're reviewing all of those, incorporating them and sending them to the designer to turn around and send hopefully to the state on Wednesday. So please do that by end of day today if you have any comments.
Thanks, Shauna. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will give you 45 or 15 minutes left of your Friday. So
You.
have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks for all the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't-